Hey, what's up? Welcome to Space Couch. It is great to see you. Um, just because, not only because I fly through the vastness of the void with just me and this couch and occasionally Space Dog, but it's really great to see you for you. Um, how you been? It's been a pretty weird week out here in space. Lots of debris, lots of dark matter, and not just the coffee. Uh, Speaking of things that are wonderful, like coffee, let's get into a little bit of our sponsors today. We have Tiger Squawk Digital. The Monomer NS record is on the way. The new Bitman album is amazing. Brand new from Isserly, surprise release. Pay What You Want, Doom Metal album. Cosmic Dread from Mr. Zoth and the Were Spiders, tearing up the charts. And Cedar Hill Furniture's Liquidation EP, the best in furniture-based techno. And a new sponsor, Boston's own Freakishly Chic. If you want to get your haircut done and look totally dope, check out Freakishly Chic at Instagram.com/freakishly.chic, serving the Boston area. Tell them Space Couch sent you. So, you guys, I am so excited about this week's guest because, I know this person, but I don't know this person. There's a lot. There's just always this guy is on fire lately, releasing stuff left and right, managing projects, snapping necks, and cashing big checks. Except, big checks for the people. We'll get into all that. Ladies and gentlemen, let me find the thing. Okay, here he is, Deftly. Deftly, you were looking like a T-shirt today.
I'm sorry. I guess I have to adjust my camera a little bit. Sorry for that accident.
Oh, what a crazy accident!
There we go.
I
would never,
up,
ever intentionally do anything like that.
How could you ever even plan for such a thing?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I did say I would try to avoid getting too political or dark or deep or anything like that. So let me take this off. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Hold on for 1 second. I
Sure
gotta
thing.
take my headphones on.
All right. I mean, we don't want to get too political here on that. And what's that say, sir?
Okay, that's much better.
Oh boy, could you read your shirt for the people?
Oh, it just says industrial music is protest music.
Goodness gracious! Oh, you and your.
Okay. Anyway, but we'll get off of that. We'll just leave it on. I'll stick to the subliminals.
Well, you are all about the subliminal, liminal, and some would even say superliminal lately, releasing stuff left and right. I guess we'll just start with the new Nau-Zee-auN, man. The Year of Hindsight EP is out now. What can you tell us about this?
Well, I grew up on Public Enemy. I grew up on in the Reagan Bush era. We had amazing protest music that was going on like crazy, and I was absolutely inspired by that. By protest comedy like George Carlin, Robin Williams was good at that time. Bobcat Goldthwait was good at that time. I mean, every type of creativity that was happening then was reacting to what was going on at the time. So, surprise, surprise, my roots tend to go that way sometimes. Dead Kennedys, whatever. So, Year of Hindsight, that is lyrically and sample-wise, it is is designed as a protest song, is designed to get into people's heads, and have a lot of things that are talking about issues that I think that people need to be aware of and put into place. So the whole thing doesn't waste space. At the same time, I think it's one of the best songs I've done to give a nod to my love of Public Enemy and Consolidated and Meat Beat Manifesto and early Ministry of the Twitch era and things of that nature. So it's not trying to hide those influences. It's if anything giving respect to them, because they do deserve respect for what they did in the day, and I love them. I absolutely love those artists.
Well, I mean, you've got.
Yeah.
I have 4 band logos and a label logo on the screen right now for you, and even with just in Nau-Zee-auN world, you cover a lot of range sonically. There's also on this EP there are two remixes of America, the Disambiguation of a Nation,
Yes.
which has, I would venture to say, fairly overt overtones of Public Enemy,
Oh, absolutely.
etc. And then Nau-Zee-auN can go full power electronics if you want. You are
Oh
not
yeah.
a one-track man.
I think Bill T. Miller puts it best. Like it's good to have friends that have seen like where I've gone and have
Mm-hmm.
very honest critiques, and I like. I'm not a narcissist. I don't like have a streak of like, oh, I'm the best in the world. You know, I have to do a little brain trick in order to promote music where I treat it as a separate entity rather than as me.
Okay.
That's how I'm able to
Interesting.
do it, and I recommend it to all the people out there that are not narcissists but are doing their art but don't like to promote it. This is a trick I'm welcoming you to try.
Okay.
Think of your art when you're promoting it as something separate from yourself. If you are not an egomaniac, that'll help you greatly. Trust me. I like giving good advice. But
yeah.
oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
And by the way, I'm Deftly D, and I have ADHD, so I may derail a little bit and need to be pulled back into the
We
conversation.
are in space that allows us a long form interview style, so
Excellent.
rant as you see fit. I want to get to this though because it's cool. Let's play a little bit of a Fantastic Plastic says eyeball fire, eyeball fire, eyeball fire. So I don't know what that means, but I'll keep you up to date as people yak away on. He's on Twitch.
Yeah.
But let's play some music off of the
Right
new
on.
Hindsight EP. This will smash cut to that.
Oh,
You won't hear it, but we can talk over it. What was that?
I did have one other homage that I want to give respect to, which is Electro and Egyptian Lover.
Okay.
I think you might catch it if you know his art, his work.
All right, so we got Year of Hindsight here.
Say America, they mean bigots. Don't speak of those whose residence predates their ignorance. Ambiguity is the tool of propaganda. If you don't support the invasion, you don't support America. And if you're anti-American,
that's that's how I will say it from now on for forever. Let me just do one little adjustment here so I can get off the black. All right. So we had a little bit of a hit from that. How would you say this might compare to previous Nau-Zee-auN releases for you?
Well, Year of Hindsight is more of an EP, a single release. So there's 3 tracks, and I kept it so that it would work out well for anyone that ever saw Better Off Dead. It is only $2. I want my $2 for those 3 songs.
$2.
Although honestly, I if you're a DJ or whatever, please let me know, and I will get to you for even cheaper if you like, because I do want to get this message out more than I want money.
All right. Well, Grasp Logic of Tiger Squawk says very awesome. So good on you.
Excellent.
Good stuff, man. Like we may circle back to Nau-Zee-auN, but
oh, that's fine.
I
mean, we have a lot. We have just from previous conversations, we have a lot to cover.
We have a lot to cover. So, Science Fiction says hello. Although, correct me if I'm wrong, Nau-Zee-auN, I was aware of Nau-Zee-auN before we met through our mutual friend Dom of
Yes.
Prurient. And I would say, do you identify that as the most you of your projects, or is it all part and parcel? Or is it just, I mean, I suppose that you answered your own question earlier where you sort of divorce yourself from that concept anyway.
Actually, no, that was more of a promotional way of handling it. But when it comes to the creative process, it is very much me.
Okay.
It is, the thing is, like, I started out in Zero Times Infinity, which was more of an experimental improvisational project where we tried to avoid our influences at first. And then our influence got added to as people in the audience from the shows were coming up and saying, "Wow, that reminds me of Test Department and SPK and Ian Zanakis and Caroline Stockhausen and all this." And we were just like, anything that we didn't know already, we were researching after they said it, because we were like, "Wow, this is cool too."
So we have on the screen, I have Zero Times Infinity and Abstinence. I know you did Terrafact back in the day, to say nothing of recent participation in the Gothicals and
Yes.
Gasoline Invertebrate. So let's go over that a little bit high level. Like, tell me about Abstinence and Zero Times Infinity.
Okay, well, we're digging into history as well as current events. My first so I guess going back further, I started out all of these things with my internship at college radio in WJUL, which is now WUML, in 19.
And where's that for the listener in America?
That's in Lowell, Massachusetts. Is one of the reasons why I did so much stuff in Lowell. The other being Records, Triple R from Ron Lassard.
Oh, okay. Yeah, hell yeah.
Yep. And another being just the community that was built around those two things. That included a lot of venues that are no longer here, like the Voiks, which was legendary. But legendary in that it was fun. It was also a whole mess.
Okay.
Like all of it. So all the good, all the bad, all the things. But 5 years into, I was going to college as a civil engineering major, doing a co-op program, and spent 5 years there. Yeah, believe it or not, I know a few things here and there. But while I was in college, I had 3 to 5 hours of sleep, was sick all the time from being sleep deprived because studies for physics. Okay, you got physics and calculus and differential equations and all this stuff coupled with the engineering tasks. And it was not easy. I'm not going to pretend it was.
Sure.
So the moment I graduated, my friends that I made there, Chris Castiglione, Rick DiStefano, and myself, finally, I got them to join me in the project that I had of creating this first band, Zero Times Infinity. Worked on demo tapes. We had no money.
Right.
We used, we had we were raised by our families, and whatever our parents had, that was what we had access to.
100%.
So, as KRS-One put it, I simply made use of what was upstairs in all 3 of our attics, or stored under this crawl space by the garage in my grandparents' case, which include fertilizer spreaders, metal. Both Rick and Chris had a wall and stack reel-to-reel in their parents' attics.
Wow.
And we put those together, did our notes of All Loving Brian Eno and Robert Fripp, and made our own tape loop delays. So,
so it's pretty like new age sounding at this time, or are you going hard noise?
We are going successfully at not sounding like anything that anyone that we had heard sounded like.
All right.
We would have walkie-talkies for vocals. We would use the radio. We would use pocket change. We would use a bed frame. We would use anything that we had our hands on. Rick had like a small Radio Shack mixer. He had a Tascam 4-track that he was borrowing from a relative.
So you were experimental in every sense of the word, it sounds like.
We were experimental and pragmatic, and bands like Einstürzen, the Neubauten, and Test Department and whatnot were a big influence, as well as comments from Golden Age hip hop, like I said, KRS-One saying, "I simply made use of what was upstairs in the attic." All of those things tie to the same idea of you're broke. That doesn't mean that you don't have tools around you that you can make music with.
Yeah, dude.
Especially if you like experimental music.
Right.
So the process of that came out with our first tape, Insomnolence. Steve Paveo, who was calling himself Mercy Moore, and he was in the bands One of Us, in Fracture, quite a few bands from then. Reflecting Skin, I think, was one of his. And he heard the tape and loved it and booked us for our first venue show after we did our first show at WJUL using what I had access to, which Hex Stump was on, as well as the Noise Laboratories guys, debut of Digital Apocalypse, who became Odgemodge, who became Ethan Eves, who worked on Frequency and did all the mixing for that video game, by the way. And
oh yeah, that was from Boston.
Right, and both of those guys joined us in Zero Times Infinity for our live show.
Oh wow!
So we had 5 people. In order to do that, there was no MIDI sequencing whatsoever. Everything was either by ear or communication. It was like a freeform jazz approach to industrial and experimental noise.
Awesome, man! Amazing.
While I was doing that, I was like, well, I have all these influences. The rule for Zero Times Infinity is improvisation, experimentation, avoiding our influences. What about the parts of me that want to do something different?
Right.
Whatever it is. If it's power electronics, if it's early golden age hip hop, if it's electro, if it's whatever. That's where Nau-Zee-auN was formed for. And it wouldn't be for years until it got developed. And I think around the time that I met Maria Moran of Zipper Spy, who was at the time... I think she had. I don't know if she got married to Ron yet or not, but she was married to Ron Lassard from Records for a number of years. It was an interesting time.
Okay.
But she had booked me for the first Nau-Zee-auN performance I ever did at a place called the Spy Room at the Evos, I think it was called. It might have had a different name at the time. And, for a very, very small crowd, I did a combination of using turntables, using noise, using beats, using backing tracks, which I never did in Zero Times Infinity, except for when we did the performance that was based on Karlheinz Stockhausen's Microphony, which kind of needed it for a structure to hold things together for that one. But I think I'm derailing from that.
No, it's all good. So, what is Abstinence? Is like a supergroup.
Abstinence is the band that I have been in for over 10 years and am still feel honored that I'm a member. When I was, going back to that history in college, around the same time I started JUL, I was in a creative arts magazine that was part of at Merrimack College. That was kind of, in a lot of ways, an oasis for people who were creative and didn't fit into the status quo norm conservative culture that was the dominating culture of the college.
I think that you just described to the audience of a Space Couch. So
yeah,
well
so if you were one of the few people that would listen to this show at a college filled with people who bent their baseball caps the same way to try to all look alike and join fraternities. This was one of the 2 havens you had.
Okay.
The other one was the Media Lab, which was also awesome, and I just posted something about that recently. Anyway, there were in the Alternative Voice, which was the Creative Arts magazine. The head of it was a woman by the name of Janine Van Patten, or a girl at that time, I guess. But she was badass.
Yeah. Like
totally awesome in every way. Brilliant, activist, intelligent, just eloquent, and empathetic and open. I think that one of the problems I see in a lot of our own culture is there's a lot of cliquishness that I think is destructive.
Okay.
I'm very lucky that I met people who were not that way as my intro when I was in college.
Very cool.
Because her boyfriend was this guy named Daryl who came up to Merrimack from New Jersey. A guy who called himself Daryl Hell.
Right.
And that was how it began. Cool. I got to see video. I got to see him performing on video from the Limelight and Palladium shows, first off, and was in awe then. At the time, he also told me about some band called Emergency Broadcast Network and to watch for them. So when they did finally play at Axis before they had video samplers, I was in that audience.
Very cool.
I watched them every time they performed up until they stopped performing that I could.
Very cool.
And oh my God, I feel so sorry for all the generations that have missed out on their live shows. Oh, so good.
Well, let's back up a step. I got to see Daryl Hell, DJ legend, do some stuff in the very room in which you are right now, live, and it was unreal. Just that he did this live Skinny Puppy mix turntablism thing, and it was pretty crazy.
Do you remember the story he told about when he did a Skinny Puppy remix before that?
Well, the guy came up to him and stuff. Like, was it
Not the
Ogilvy?
guy. It was Kevin Key that
was
came up
Kevin
on
Key.
stage. He's doing runbacks back and forth, and he showed me video of this where it's like, was it? I'm trying to remember what the sample is from Skinny Puppy that he was doing. It's like, look at the pictures. Look at the pictures. Look at, and then Kevin Key just walks on stage. He's DJing as Daryl's DJing on this special night where Kevin Key's one of the DJs. And Kevin walks on stage next to Daryl, goes on the mic and just repeats the sample there. And Daryl's like, I'm done. There's no way I can top that as an ending. Done. Kevin Key just walked up and recited what I was doing runbacks with.
So now Daryl is sort of the linchpin of Abstinence, or is that not how that works?
He's the one who founded Abstinence. Okay. So when I met him, Abstinence had already been around for a long time.
Okay. And
I mean, I remember talking to, I remember talking to Ben when I was first talking with him personally and finding out that we both knew Daryl and that Abstinence was a big influence on him.
Very cool.
So that gives you an idea of how far back he goes.
And Abstinence is still pretty active. I know you just did the Consolidated tribute. We'll get into that shortly because I don't want to go on.
Abstinence is actually right now #1 on my plate of creative things I'm working on.
Very cool.
We are recording for a new performance and album right now.
Oh, nice.
As a matter of fact, this set of metal that you see if I move the shirt is for some of the recording I'm doing right now for a track on Abstinence.
Oh, very cool. Yeah.
Although there's stuff on top of it, which includes a box set and some things I wanted to show.
Well,
sculpture from Ed, that type of thing. We can get into that later.
I'm sure you'll use that. Because this just came out, I want to circle back to Nau-Zee-auN for a second.
Yes.
Boz for Oz, the Australian tribute compilation. You do a Severed Heads cover.
Yeah, and it was something that definitely took me back in a different direction that I've done in Nau-Zee-auN. Almost a different aspect of, that's it. When you said, is this the most you? Is it you? It's like, well, Year of Hindsight and that Severed Heads cover are both me.
Great.
And they're very different directions.
So when you're checking out the Year of Hindsight EP out now on Voidstar Productions, look for Boz for Oz, but I don't have the URL for that memorized. But check it out. It's great.
Yes. I think it's Boz for Oz, spelt with Z's, by the way. BOZ for OZ, .bandcamp.com, if I'm not mistaken.
Look at that guy. Okay. So professional. Going back into history just for a second because I'm intrigued. What's this about blindfolding and tying up audience may or may not be involving fish guts?
Well, those are two separate performances, actually.
Okay.
This is kind of like when we were doing a sound check for the Golfsicles, and the sound engineer said, "Send the most obnoxious sound you've got," and I'm like, "I have to choose."
That's the best. That's the best.
I guess I'll do those as two separate things. The first one, let's do the Operation Mindwipe one. That was the performance. Daryl was the lead on this. So Operation Mindwipe is also a project that Daryl was doing long before I was a member. And if you look up on, I think it's SXK.com, has the Isolation Lounge, if I remember right. You'll see a list of the performers on there, and there were members of Dead Voices on there, and Negative Land, and Evan Michelson, who you might know from Oddities or Obscura.
All right.
Though those are both over, I believe, but she isn't, and I can't wait to see what she does next. Andy, the Vomit Arsonist, was in it.
Oh, nice.
Yep. And basically, we made it so that it was a 2-weekend performance for a very small number of people that paid for this. And basically, it was meet at a location. We will tell you 24 hours beforehand. A car will drive up, pick you guys up, put blackout glasses on you so that it's blindfolds, so you can't see anything. And they're like, we got the eye protection goggles that were completely blacked out and taped up and everything, so you can't see anything. Daryl is the type who studies tactics and whatnot, and studies the way that governments work and all the things that he's more sociopolitical than I am. I know, but he was like that when I first met him, and there wasn't an internet to do research on.
Right.
So imagine that he's thought out the amount of time it takes for someone to drive around and make it so that you cannot map where you are going.
Wow.
Well, he made sure to put that in there. So then you get to your location. You have no idea how you got there or where. Well, you drove,
Right.
but drivers would bring down people at a carload at a time over here, and then support staff would walk the temporarily blind people over to a place where they would be seated on the ground in an area that has one of the most inhuman echoes that you will ever hear.
Okay.
Let me say that again. It has one of the most inhuman. Oh, wait. It has one of the most inhuman echoes you have ever experienced.
Big ups to the very dapper Dre Robinson of Scilab. He says, awesome. I was at a Negative Land show where we wore blinders, and hi.
Oh, nice. The that must have been the It's All in Your Head FM. I have the Bible version of that.
Very cool.
The Quran was all sold out. Sorry. And you can look it up. I'm not even kidding about that. That's their joke, not mine.
So you hijack an audience, blindfold them, take them to an undisclosed location for a noise assault.
Not quite an assault so much as an experience, a experience where you have artists that are performing with scrap metal, with percussion, with electronics, radios, live broadcasts that are internet streamed from other continents.
Oh wow!
Like look up Isolation Lab on SXK and look at what we did.
Okay.
Because this one, like, there's no way I'm going to be able to cover what I'm so happy about of this performance in the justice that it deserves.
Very
that
cool.
was, and then a week later, they would the ones that could come in and get to finally find out who performed for them because they didn't know that Evan Michelson was banging on stuff right by their heads.
Cool.
They didn't know that some of those artists, like I forget if Mike Spivey was revealed or not from Dead Voices on Air. I forget if the Negative Land member who had passed away and the permission that was given by Mark Spivey and Mark Hostler and the rest of the Negative Land crew for using these recordings that had never been heard before, theoretically, like all those things. I don't know how much of that was revealed or not at the time, because I remember there were some things that were revealed about who was performing and a lot that was kept secret so that they'd find out after, because when you have those numbers, it's a lot more fun to not do the, hey, we want numbers, so we're going to promote every single thing there. How about we're going to give you an experience, and after you're going to find out how much everyone else missed out on.
That's pretty awesome.
I really love doing that, just so you know.
Okay. What was the Fish Gut show?
Oh, that was Zero Times Infinity.
Okay, that was Zero Times Infinity.
And that was more than one. Well, okay, Fish Guts were only one, but the Mayhem series had 3 at least.
Okay.
And I have to give credit where due. I'd say Hawaiian Shirt Mafia definitely, or me and Chris's experience being a part of that, while it got kicked out of venues left and right, was it was definitely an inspiration for us.
Very cool.
So backing up a little bit, I'm guessing you have some fairly non-confrontational geeky people out there that listen, right?
Sure.
Would you say? Okay, good. Because me and Chris, honestly, that's more the way we're wired. We're not naturally confrontational or anything like that. We are the people who are computer programmers and engineers and everything that make music and art and are really interested in theory and science and things of that nature. So we're, when we heard the term riot nerd, we're like,
I've never heard it.
Riot nerd was a term that was, it's funny, like things have come in and out of circulation. Like right now, I'm sure there's a lot of people who haven't heard the term Ilbient or the term, or that IDM before it was called IDM. We frequently heard stuff like armchair techno, or ambient house or whatever.
Right.
Or the names have changed to protect the guilty and the innocent or whatever. A lot of what used to be called power noise now perfectly sounds the same as the stuff that's being called industrial techno today.
Right.
That's why Orphix was called that then, and didn't really need to change much to become that now.
Okay. I hear you. So it's all pretty fluid, and much like your own musical styles are all over the map. I want to get to this
style.
What's that? Well, hey, that's how we roll here out in space. We're on a rogue flight path, dude. Like I got my own show, and we can do whatever we want.
Yep.
Punk rock. There you go.
Oh, by the way, this doggy.
Yes.
Can you read that?
SRL 2018.
Yes, that was signed by Mark Pauline during that performance in New York of Survival Research Labs.
Very cool.
And came off of a giant mace ball made of a bunch of these facing outward with the legs going and it yipping, all of them yipping, being whipped around by a robot that got smashed to pieces by a pitching machine with a whole bunch of 2x4s. It was awesome. You can find video of that happening, by the way.
Wow.
This cute little guy, he survived some serious apocalypse.
He's a rescue then.
He is a beautiful, cute little rescue dog.
Fantastic. We have to get to this. Voidstar Productions, the unstoppable Boston juggernaut. I shouldn't even say Boston because you are world spanning. Part label, part promotional vehicle, part cybernetic mech. You've just put out freeze etch, cathode ray tube, many other things, included this awesome consolidated tribute with Abstinence, our dear friend Control Shift, tons of stuff on that, man.
I have to say that the consolidated tribute is definitely one of those things that goes down in pride of things that I've done because Mark Adam and Phil's work in Consolidated had a massive influence on me. It was like one of those moments where, okay, I'm going to stop blabbing because I'll get in the way of you doing the next thing.
It's all right. It's why we're here. We're to talk to you. But we can check out this contribute to Consolidated. Let me know if I mess up the URL, voidstarproductions.bandcamp.com.
That's correct. And
Fantastic.
I will say that there's one other new one that I understand not being quite known by name yet. But Chord, Ben Flagg's project, this is his debut. Mm-hmm. Listening to this, I'm like, how on earth is this his debut? He sounds like he's been working at this for a few decades. It's
Chord,
really damn beautiful and good.
It's really great.
Yeah.
And out now on Voidstar Productions. Voidstar Productions is a label? Question mark?
That's a good way of putting it. I mean, Voidstar Productions has been a catch-all term for a concept that I've had that covers music label distribution, production for live events, let's see, and also a network of trying to brainstorm and figure out resources that'll help us, help the community of artists and musicians that do industrial noise, breakcore, IDM, EBM, not EDM, but EBM, etc. Yeah.
Very cool. So how are you finding the label head experience, if that's even the right
and weird artists like, for example, Journey to the Center of the Colon. Ed, by the way, made this.
Oh yeah, you have the only Journey to the Center of the Colon describes you as I've seen him do this a couple times, like describe you as sort of his main impetus is the getting out into the world. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I mean, he was at a lot of Zero Times Infinity performances, and it's funny now that the term looper as a musician style is such that there are now festivals being hosted, and like I'm now friends with Laurie Amat, who has worked in the Residence for a long time. For anyone unfamiliar with the Residence, that's a history lesson in surrealist music if ever there was to look up.
Very cool.
Really, really recommend if you want some weird stuff. That's a good one to go. You know.
Well, Science Fiction says a label, like how we're a label. Sounds like it. Science Fiction's on our own Tiger Squawk Records. Sounds like Voidstar kind of creates a resource pool and helps people out wherever possible. So we have Chord out. How are you finding like the new Freeze Etch and Cathode Ray tube albums?
Both of them are it's funny. Like I didn't intend this. But I think, honestly, even though they're coming from worlds of intelligent dance music versus noise versus more ambient sounding versus, all these different directions, I think there's honestly an aesthetic beauty that is shared in the releases of Chord, Cathode Ray Tube, Freeze Etch, and Asferat all at the same time right now. So I have 4 in a row that somehow tap into this despite coming from rather different genres and different approaches.
Very cool. Very cool.
Didn't intend it, but they all have it. Something just meshed right in the world, you know?
Well, for the audience, Journey to the Center of the Colon is a Massachusetts looper, vocal looper who's unreal, unreal. Check him out when you get a chance. You've put on some pretty big events under the Voidstar banner. Is that a world you ever think about returning to?
I would like to, but right now I'd say time is more prevalent than money at this moment. I'm not in the best. Right now things are tough on the day job side, and rare in the free time, creative, and that side of things. So I'm taking advantage of what things I have strengths in, while trying to fix the ones that I don't right now.
Okay.
But when I'm back, I will go back to booking things quite a bit, especially given the number of artists that we have.
Dude, rediscovering my sort of noise roots, by way of you, if I'm being totally honest, has been one of, if not the best thing about moving to Boston. So thank you for that. We'll get into that in a second, because the other thing I need to cover is high voltage circumcision on Mondays on WZBC.
Yes.
With our own Deftly-D. I've been privileged enough to do Gasoline live. I saw you play a radio studio live, not like bring in like, a 303 and hit, but you plunked the springs that hold the lights up and delayed it, and it sounded fucking incredible.
I'm very well practiced at that. I used to do that at JUL too.
You turned a basic radio studio into a sonic jungle gym. It was insane to watch. But you've been on your own radio show, High Voltage Brian, Jesus Christ, High Voltage Circumcision on Voidstar WZBC. Tell me about how you got started in that. What can new listeners expect?
Well, I actually got started at WJUL much earlier in '91, like I was talking about there.
Right.
Became an intern, and I lucked out in a way that my internship was actually screwed up, and I wound up there as an intern longer. But that meant that I had 3 different DJs that taught me their different styles, and all of them were people who were veterans of it and were good at teaching. There was one guy who showed up one day, and I'm just like a shy kid going, How do I start a radio show? Okay, you go through this process. Okay, you have an internship here. Okay, so I go in, and then there's this old guy who comes in, cranks up the monitor speakers to rock and roll concert loud, and is just like bam, comes in with power. Nice. Right off the bat, and then is just teaching me never put your hands here on the record and do this, and this is how you cue this, and giving him the first run of how he does things. Next day, he's gone, and there's someone else because he was just filling in for someone. That someone says, well, I'm just filling in, blah, blah, blah. That person goes, and I get Dave Often. Dave Often's the one who introduced me to so much music. He introduced me to Databank A, to Think Tree, to just like tons of bands that were awesome at that time. Talked about seeing Skinny Puppy, talked about seeing Sleep Chamber, and this is in 1991 or 92. So he had a clue. And the funny thing is, when I did co-op jobs in civil engineering, my last job that I did after graduating was working at a civil engineering firm that unfortunately kind of screwed over its employees quite a bit. But I met Andrew Zavakovats there because he was the one engineer they didn't screw over and kept on a yearly basis for his unique creativity. And so I wound up working with him and becoming friends. And then I joined Databank A and Dominion while also pushing him to perform again, and had him on the radio show and all that. But JUL, I was there for 10 years, basically 91 to 2001. Took a long hiatus so I could spend more time on music, ironically. And then about 10 or 11 years ago, I see a post from Brian Lemag, who you may know from
sure.
the Industrial Factory.
Yeah.
He's also a resident DJ and host of Corrosion at oh man, Brighton Music Hall and such. So yeah, and I mean, we played Zero Times Infinity shows on his show as well as Corin Bernardi or DJ Punketta's show when she was on ZBC way back in the day. So
cool.
he was complaining about someone not showing up after him and needing to shut down and not being informed and everything. And like, well, I'd be interested, and wound up interning on his show. And they're like, oh, can you send an air check tape? And Brian's just like, well, why don't you just tune in? He's doing everything. It's like, I'm already experienced at this. So I got a show right after his pretty quickly because of the experience I already had and the legacy I had already built. I don't think it would have gone quite that easily for most people, but I'd been doing it a long time, and he knew what I was about. So once I had that show, it was literally continuing from there. And then when we did the 25-year anniversary festival for Voidstar Productions, which was one of the two big fests that you probably are talking about earlier, I started switching as I was brainstorming. It's like, well, why don't we start putting Voidstar Productions on the branding for these things, because it's really all one. It's one unit that's tired of being beaten, tired of being oppressed. Sorry, wrong thing. It's one unit that's designed to work for everything to help everything else. It's like the promotion of Cord as a new artist is also mentoring someone who hasn't been through the experiences yet, but will. And seeing if we can make him even better and more powerful and everything than you can possibly imagine. Than he is. And the same goes for every artist on there. I try to. I mean, it's going to vary with interactions and what people want and need and everything else.
Very cool.
All right, I digress. I have ADD derailed myself. So
it's all right. So how can people listen? On terrestrial radio, give me the call sign. Is it 90.3?
You can tune in to 90.3 FM WZBC in Newton, or you can listen online at wzbc.org.
Oh,
as I see so frequently that I decide, screw it, I'm just going to do the radio voice.
Yeah, I love it. I think I'm pregnant.
Although to give credit, I honestly prefer Ed Brandon of Journey to Center of the Colon, or Hieronymus Q. Blankenship's version when he goes into his damn it, it's something prime. Tip of the tongue. Okay, I'll drop it.
What's all right?
He goes into a robot voice when he does it. That's which he also uses in his robot phone sex piece.
All right. Well, you never know what you're going to get with the illustrious Journey to the Center of the Colon. One of the great people I've met at, check out this transition, your noise salons. If we could go to that. When we were moving to Boston, I was taking a mental analysis of who I knew out here that might want to do the gothsicles with me, and you were my first choice for just sonic reasons, just because I've always been a fan. Then I found out you lived a stone's throw away.
That was nice.
that was great. Just on a beach, no less, and invited me over for your periodic private what you're calling noise salons, and I was introduced to this amazing group of people. I got back into noise, fell in love with gear again. It's when people ask me what my favorite venue in Boston is, I say my friend Dave's house.
Thank you.
It's just amazing. Can you tell me about how these started, how long you've been doing them?
Well, first I'll back up a little bit. I actually usually just call them salons, but because salon does have a history as a usage for parties for artists to get together and play for each other in poetry or whatever. But since we do industrial noise, breakcore, EDM, I'm not EDM, EBM, and all sorts of experimental things. I suppose if you want to differentiate from the traditional idea of a salon, I guess noise is as close as you get.
There you go.
Yeah. The salons were inspired in part from discussions, once again, with Daryl Hell. he had done parties of a similar sort when he had a house in on the Jersey Shore that he's told me about. I unfortunately never went to these ones, but he had guests like Emergency Broadcast Network at his. So
very cool.
Yep. So there's a high bar to reach for me.
Well, you got gasoline, so same thing.
Yep. Backing up a little bit, he had EBN where they brought the vehicle and
like,
had the satellite dish with
giant transformer truck. Cool.
Yes, and the neighbors checking out a live outdoor performance type thing. I mean, that would be...
That's some punk rock shit, dude.
No matter how far I go, there's always a higher bar to reach. But Daryl's discussions of that I thought were a great concept. I had also known one or two other artists who did something a little similar for their parties. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, it's like, friends who go do parties, it's like, okay, you've got your kind of social party with the coworkers that is just like, ranges from, okay, these are at least fun geeks, they're doing this, to, okay, this is awkward, I gotta make sure that I'm not embarrassing myself in front of a boss or something.
Right.
And then you've got the parties where it's like, okay, we got people who are like the couples that want to meet and have a normal whatever. Those things I've been in relationships where I've done those too. Mm-hmm. And then we have the parties where it's like, all right, everyone wants to get drunk or whatever. Right. And it's like, yep, been there too.
Right.
You know what artists really like doing? Ironically enough, they love making art. So why don't we? Why the hell are we doing parties where we're not doing that?
Oh,
that's crazy. Think about it. Sometimes the obvious stuff is like surprising how few people think of it.
Yeah, it was great. Like, you had Heidi and I over. We didn't know anybody. We turned out to be playing with Snow Beasts a week later in Providence, so I got to meet those guys who have been great. And it was just the most welcoming, like, I don't know what this is. Everybody does 15 minutes. It's like the open mic you remember from the coffee house in college, but no, everyone's a bit older, but still killing it.
Honestly, the age doesn't matter to me.
Age does not matter. It's great.
If you're, I mean, we don't want to make it like a child party where it's like, okay, we have to all behave for the kids.
Right.
I mean, we have Pine Tree State Mind Control play there occasionally.
Very
and stuff
crazy.
Like that.
that was the first one I went to. I was like, I don't know what this is, but I'm flashing back to like these noise takeovers we did in parks in Madison with Prurian when he was in Madison. So it's just,
I miss Dom.
I miss him too, man. It was just it was a really great throwback for me. And then you invited Gasoline or me to do some stuff, and I have been using that as sort of a proving ground for this project I'm working on called Gasoline, of which you are now. We've done one live member show with another one coming up in Providence.
That's coming. What do you remember what the date is for that one? I don't have it in front of me.
May 23.
May 23rd? Okay.
Yeah, with Big Time Kill and Decent News and Down City Armory. I don't know too much about that third act, but Big Time Killer.
Decent News is new to me. The other two are both like I've been interacting more. Special thanks to the We Are Not Trump guys, and I think they may both be on the Boz for Oz compilation too.
Very cool. Well, check out Alchemy in Providence, Rhode Island.
Nice.
So but it's been great having you on because it's you are just a sonic Swiss Army knife. Tell me about the, let me get excuse me if I fuck up the origin story, the tank base became the Widowmaker or the other way around?
Oh, I forgot to bring the Widowmaker.
Don't worry about it, but you can find pictures of this online, but you are something of industrious.
Hold that thought.
All right, we'll just do a little space break. Please check out voidstarproductions.bandcamp.com. We accidentally both run record labels that are very similar. Voidstar and Tiger Squawk are... there it is! So, look at this monstrosity.
So this is... So this is the remainder of the Widowmaker. I have to do some repairs on it, but It
Oh
is
man,
sliced apart from guitars and pans and welded together by Josh Calvi, who helped me out with this one. From that you might know from Terratron, though I first met him as an intern at WJUL, and that helped him get a start as Terratron.
very cool.
The follow-up to it is the anti-tank bass.
Oh, the anti-tank base. Excuse me, I
Yep.
screwed that up. That
It
is a
has-
monster.
And it is heavy. I'm like I have to use my leg to balance this one because one arm is not enough. It is using a bass pickup, which you can see right there.
Very cool.
And as you can see, there are no strings, just springs, which gives it, if you look closely, the way I tuned it was to mark where the pitches are
Nice.
and mark a scale to match the bottom spring,
Wow.
with the other springs being close to it. And surprisingly,
Mad science.
it has kept its pitch quite well.
Mm.
Okay, for those of you who've been tuned in for the whole show, I hope that helped reward you for listening to me battle on.
It's all right. Long form. I'm all about it.
Okay.
So, what's next for you radio DJ, label, imperator, so many bands, salon host. What's next for the mighty Deftly-D?
So much time, so little to do. Oh, stop, reverse that. Well, okay. Right now, I'm working on new Nau-Zee-auN material, both for single releases that are struggling against the challenge of current events, because I have a combination of trying to keep track of what's going on. So right now, the ideas are kind of flooding. It's not a matter. I am not having any creative blocks whatsoever with these days.
Good.
not necessarily all good, because we're responding to some pretty bad stuff.
Okay.
But I won't get into that on this trip. Okay.
You can do what you want, man.
Yeah, I mean, between that and Abstinence being really on front burner right now, we are working on deadlines for doing recordings and getting ready for our album. And when we do the albums, performances are the next thing we're working on. So
Very cool.
I'm looking forward to this one. I haven't Zero Times Infinity. I haven't done anything new with in a while. I did solo instead of Zero Times Infinity at the last PVD Loop Fest, but we'll see what happens for the next round and see if Chris has his own things that are going on with Uku Fumbana and everything. So that'll be good to hear as well. Let's
pause
see.
1 second. Tell us about PVD Loop Fest. That sounds pretty awesome.
Oh, yeah, it is. Okay, I derailed from that conversation earlier. Let's see the ADD thing. Laurie Amat, who is a opera level singer who has a long history working with the Residents, and as it turns out, also made cameo appearances with, I think it was Brighter Death Now and Consolidated.
And that's awesome. And I learned at your party is the voice of the Drider on Gauntlet Legends.
What?
The video game Gauntlet Legends.
Okay.
She does the voice of the Drider.
I had no idea, but I'm not surprised one bit.
All right.
She is an amazing vocalist, a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful friend who is awesome and just a beautiful person overall. And she is also part of a looper community that's international. And the funny thing is, I started out in Zero Times Infinity. Remember, I had no money.
Right.
I had, I'm out of college. I'm struggling. I'm using whatever I can. This mic stand would be an instrument, and still is, but it would be a more important instrument because I wouldn't be able to afford the stuff that you see here in those days. That I'm older. I've been working at this for a while. That's why I have these things. So in those days, samplers, those are wicked expensive. I mean,
Dude,
I love the SK1. So did Chris, and Chris had one at one point, and we did use an SK1 on some stuff, combined with that tape delay thing that we had made ourselves that was electrocuting Rick every now and then through its case, and had to be at a certain angle with a book that was just the right size to keep it from having the fan catch. And yes, we were crazy enough to bring it on stage and perform with it in that rat
masochist.
If you look up the footage of our first club performance at the Rathskeller, the Rat in Boston, not long before it closed, when we were opening for Mentallo and the Fixer, Crocodile Shop, and Battery Cage for a first show in a club.
Hell yeah.
We were crazy enough to actually be using that on stage. With what I just said for the issues.
that is some college shit. That's hilarious.
Well, we had just graduated, but yes.
Right.
Anyway, so imagine going from that and saying, well, I love music like Public Enemy that is layered and layered and layered with samples and all the old wax track stuff and all of that. So I love sample-based music, but I can't afford samplers. So guitar pedals that do echoes.
Right.
You know, all these things, delay pedals that I'm like, what's a delay? Oh, it's an echo. Okay, so learn the terminology.
Right.
And this is back in the days where I'm trying to figure where I still didn't know the difference between a 1/4-inch cable and the RCA and what the names were.
Totally.
So I very much DIY learning from the start. And so, you know, if I wanted to create samples and whatnot, we'd use loopers. We'd use things where it was like Rick had an Amiga, actually a couple Amigas by that point later on. That was the closest. Tracker programs on the Amiga were being used live in order to create sequences on the fly. And like when we did Control Through Somnolence, which was one of the first Zero Times Infinity songs to be more harder edged rhythmic, we would always resample live me saying repetition or someone else saying repetition for that song that would be triggered on the SK1 or whatever. So that lack of resources made it so that I wound up falling in love with doing looper music without knowing that there would ever be something called looper music. So decades later, it's like, oh, there's a Looper Fest, and Laurie Mott is hosting it, and there are people doing all sorts of different things that fall under this, and all the people doing looper pedals, and I'm just like, you know what's funny? I've been doing this a long time.
That's awesome.
I remember a time when people weren't doing this all the time. Like, I remember when I started, my mother showing me Les Paul on showing off one of his looper things, and that being revolutionary because I'm like, holy crap, other people are doing this.
Nice.
Because it was so rare. Now I go to Laurie Mott's festival. It's like, here is Mando Man from Japan with incredible control, who builds mandolins and builds stringed instruments. And he is using his feet like every single one of them has opposable thumbs for all its ridiculous paddle rack. He is beautiful and amazing and good. And then then she has Cindy Soprano, who's doing musical saw and hurdy-gurdy on loopers.
Very cool.
And then there's someone who wrote their own software for a looper. And then there's people with cellos. And then there's us with power tools and scrap metal and modular synthesis, screaming our heads off and going all crazy and everything, and doing what we do in Zero Times Infinity, which is very much looper based. So it's just amazing that this whole world has sprung up. And then thinking back to when we were basically monkeying around and stumbling into that world when it didn't seem to exist other than like what we read about Brian Eno and Robert Fripp.
It's in Providence, like which is pretty close to. Well, I'm in space, but sometimes I'm in Dorchester in Boston.
Oh yeah.
Dre says we use the SK1 and SK5 live. Good stuff. Was that in Scilab or anyway?
Yep. I mean, even the keyboardist that we have in Abstinence, who was a keyboardist in Abstinence when I met Daryl back in '91, as far as I know, or close to it. John Bechtel, who we did a documentary about. Daryl's the main one, but I was a co-producer for that. He is now keyboardist for Ministry, and he's been in Fear Factory, Killing Joke, Murder Incorporated.
That's awesome.
Okay, some of those bands. Anyway,
some of the fresh-faced teens.
While we were recording at John's studio, there was a very nice SK1 that someone had done. I think they did circuit bending and all sorts of art with the whole thing. So it's probably like a special artist who is well known for it that I honestly don't know off the top of my head, and I should be embarrassed and horrified for that. I don't know. But nonetheless, yeah, he had something like that.
I want to. We are on a rogue flight path out here in space, so I'm going to pull the ship back into the station shortly. I want to say you've been crushing it with the Gothicals lately. Mary Catman, former guest of the show, sent me a special email to say how much she enjoyed your percussive performance at the Jungle here in Boston.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. The loved the only public gasoline and vertebrate show live. You were amazing on that. Thank you for your time today. Let's be
My pleasure.
semi-professional. Check out voidstaproductions.bandcamp.com for the Year of Hindsight stuff we played earlier. bozintheoz.bandcamp.com for the new Severed Heads cover. And all over the place. You really can't go wrong. Anything you want to plug before we cut the signal here to space?
Yeah, on Vimeo, go check out Delusions of Architecture from Abstinence. That is a 3-year project that we did where we create our own video sample library. And you could say that it's a homage to it's a extension of Daryl's experience being a member of Emergency Broadcast Network later, and the history of abstinence and our physicality and all of that combined with our sociopolitical commentary and his extensive interview library of people that he's interviewed that include Alec Empire, FM Einheit, Genesis Peorage, as well as whistleblowers, as well as Annie Sprinkles, as well as like on and on. Daryl is one of the best interviewers I know.
Okay.
Easily.
Well, check out Delusions of Architecture on Vimeo. And goodness gracious, we're going to have you back on, Deftly, because we got 6 more hours of stuff to get into.
I kind of expected it. There's no way we could talk about all the things that we were talking about before the interview in 1 hour. I know it already. I mean, no worries.
Don't worry about it. This is Brian for Space Couch for Deftly Out. I accidentally hit the end credits button. But it's okay. It's okay. That's how we roll here on Space Couch. And